Much like the prophet Jonah, I felt that his resilience, his yes to God, was very much echoed in my own experience. Much like Jonah, I too ran away from the call of God, to follow God, to go where God is calling me. At times, it was my fear. It was my own sort of lack of self-understanding, self-awareness, and maybe even worth, that I didn't feel that I was worthy to be a priest, to be able to study for the Archdiocese here. But I realized, though, that if God was calling me, that I needed to answer that call and follow wherever He may lead. I went to Rome in 2000 to the World Youth Day, and it was an amazing experience. I entered that pilgrimage with the aspirations of re-enkindling my faith, to find God. I remember vividly praying and saying to God, God, if you're real, you need to prove yourself. You need to show yourself to me, because I just don't have time to believe in something that doesn't exist. And through that experience, God proved Himself. So after I returned back from the World Youth Day in Rome, I decided to go through RCIA to relearn my faith. At that time, I didn't know what it meant to be Catholic. I didn't even know what the faith was. So I did that, and as part of that journey, I also changed my major at Campion. I went from psychology to religious studies, and I took all the courses there that I could in Christianity. Through my experience working with infant baptism and also through the RCIA program there, I really felt a call to serve. And at the time there was a permanent deacon, Deacon Karl Kazmierski, who led both of those programs and who inspired me to contemplate a vocation as a permanent deacon. As time went on, I decided that God was calling me to give more of myself. As a permanent deacon, I felt that I was willing to serve God, but only on my terms, not to give myself completely and fully to God. So I took 2 different retreats with the Archdiocese of Ottawa to discern the call to the priesthood. The first retreat I took, I felt a sense of anxiety, and it wasn't until the end of that particular retreat that I realized that at that moment, God wasn't calling me to be a priest. On my second attempt at a discernment retreat with the Archdiocese, I felt a sense of emptiness. And that emptiness led me to contemplate that maybe God was not calling me to be a priest, that maybe I needed to take some time. And so I decided to move back to Saskatchewan. After I moved back to Saskatchewan, I felt that maybe it was time to look at a different vocation, a different career path. And so I discerned maybe a call to work in the healthcare industry. And at the time, I was missing a few courses. So I decided to take a few additional courses. And as I was taking those courses, I just realized that I still didn't feel quite content with where I was in my life. And it was at that time that I was watching a program on EWTN, which is a Catholic channel in the States. And by watching that, I was inspired to look into a Franciscan community in the US. Now, the Franciscan community that I joined was the Conventual Franciscans, and I had an opportunity to discern with them for 1.5 years in Baltimore, and then again half a year in Indiana. And through that opportunity, I was able to discern that, yes, God was calling me to the priesthood, but He just wasn't calling me to be a religious priest. And so I came back to the Archdiocese of Regina, intent on pursuing a vocation to the priesthood. That particular call has led me to a wonderful poem by Francis Thompson, who wrote a poem called The Hound of Heaven. And the quote goes, "God follows the fleeing soul by His divine grace, and though in sin it seeks to hide itself, divine grace follows after, unwearyingly follows, till the soul feels its pressure forcing it to turn to Him alone in that never-ending pursuit." And what I've realized is that if God is calling you, He will always call you. No matter where you go, whatever you do, you will always hear the voice of God calling you, pursuing you, much like the hound of heaven.